Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another book review. This is for The Other Wind by Ursula K, Guin, which is book 6 in the Earthsea Cycle. This is a fantasy, it's high fantasy, specifically it's also kind of seafaring in some ways. Not this one, not so much, but the world of Earthsea is a whole bunch of different little islands. It's not, there's not a main continent. It's full of dragons. This book specifically has a lot to do with dragons. But this is also a book that's not like an action-adventure story. It's a more thoughtful, more contemplative book, and I kind of really appreciate that. So, before I get into the main body of my review here, though, I would just quickly like to say if you like what you're seeing from an Erudite adventure, we'd really appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Alright, so The Other Wind is book 6 of the Earthsea Cycle by Ursula K, Guin, as I already mentioned. This is the last book in the series, and it does a great job of wrapping it up. Book 4 is also an ending in some ways, and it was initially intended as the last book of Earthsea. However, I'm very glad that Le Guin decided to come back and write more in this world, because there was more stories to tell in this world. Of course, book 5 is a collection of shorter tales. It's titled Tales of Earthsea, or Tales from Earthsea, and short stories set in the world of Earthsea. And those are great as well. They help to flesh out the world, but book 6 is kind of the end cap for this series, and it works really well as that. The world building continues to be amazing, and after what we learned of this world in book 5, we are really starting to understand what's going on, and we get even more answers here. Oftentimes they're answers to questions that we didn't even know we had. We get to see more of Tahanu and Tanar and Lebanon, which is the king, and so many more of the characters that we've just grown to, or that we've come to know throughout the series. We get another chance to catch up with them, to meet them, and to learn what's going on with that. The story isn't a story of adventure, though, as I already mentioned. It is much more an intellectual, a contemplative and thoughtful discussion set in a fantasy world. I will say that because of this, the process of reading this book, or rather of listening to this book, wasn't as fun due to it not being a fast-paced adventure story. That's not a negative. There's a difference in there's a difference in the way that stories are told and what they're told for. The action-adventure stories are oftentimes aren't as deep, aren't as thoughtful, but they're just adventure, fun. Let's go take our minds off the world for a minute and just have some fun. Whereas this other style, where it's more thoughtful, more contemplative, it is not that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Because the process of reading this book for me wasn't as fun, that didn't take away from my enjoyment or appreciation of the story once I'd finished it. I love action and adventure in my fantasy, but I can also really appreciate a slower, more purposeful and deep story where it takes its time to get to the point that it's trying to say and doesn't just rush full speed ahead. Again, this is book 6 in the series, so I can't really go into that much detail because of spoilers, but as Le Guin always does, there's a strong focus on themes in this book, especially themes regarding death. In many ways, this book is an exploration of death and how it affects people. Of course, being set in a fantasy world gives it the opportunity to incorporate ideas that don't really exist in our world, and seeing how Le Guin is able to do that is very interesting. This kind of doesn't really make sense. The ideas exist in our world, obviously, or else they couldn't be written into a fantasy novel by an author on Earth. But they don't exist physically, if that makes sense. Overall, this series has been absolutely amazing, and if you can get past the idea that fantasy has to be big and fast and full of action all the time, then you can really come to appreciate what is done in these books. Plus, Le Guin does dragons excellently, which, if you know me, you have good dragons and I'm happy. Definitely one of the best takes on dragons there is. They're very different from things like Tolkien's dragons, or things like Lady Trent Memoirs dragons, or even very different from How to Train Your Dragon dragons. They're dragons, yes, and that makes me happy, but they're very different, and I love that as well. So that is my review for The Other Wind, book 6 of the Earthsea Cycle by Ursula K. Guin. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday. We have our social medias linked in the description down below. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.